Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so we're gonna go over the notes that I was ending with yesterday that I sent out the new notes. I think I did it yesterday for our next phase, which is focusing on, so Kennedy wins the 1960 election. We talked about stuff that's happening between 1959, 1960, and the early years of the 1960s, and today's PowerPoint goes over the new frontier. So the last probably 5 presidents that we've talked about from Theodore Roosevelt on, we've focused on the name of their platform or agenda and what it includes. So Kennedy and his program is the New Frontier. So today we're going to take a little bit more of an in-depth look as to what Kennedy's program includes on the New Frontier. But I do want to talk about, I'm sorry, got something in my eye. I do want to talk about those last couple of slides of Kennedy and the Cold War, to where it talks about the Cuban Missile Crisis. So it was a pretty intense situation. So basically 13 days of October of 1962, the nation is sitting on pins and needles. We are scared to death of what's about to happen. I mean, we all imagine worst case scenario, World War III, and it's all going to be nuclear bombs, and we're all going to be blown to smithereens. So that's what we're imagining. So again, if you can picture people either building underground bomb shelters or going and practicing getting in and out of their bomb shelters, people stocking up on food. We can kind of compare similar situations to what's happening right now with people stocking up on certain essential items and those items being hard to find. I mean, you would have seen kind of a very similar situation. People are setting up bunkers and putting portable radios, canned goods, and things like that in it. So during this 13-day time span, what happens is that the Soviet Union places missiles in Cuba. Again, Cuba's only 90 miles away from Florida. And to retaliate, to get back at them, to make sure they know that that's fine, we're going to play too, almost like a game of checkers. Or chess, where you've got checkmate, right? So anyway, Soviet Union has missiles in Cuba. The United States will put missiles in Turkey. So we both are situated. It's just playing a really big game of chicken almost to see who's going to make the first move. Now, here's what I want you to think about. I've said it a couple of times already. Think about the fact that we have cards that we can pull, right? The fact that, number one, the whole world knows we have the capability. Number two, the whole world knows that we're not afraid to use that capability. And number three, everybody knows the result of, what that outcome was when we did decide to use it, and we used it not once but twice. So when you talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis, we're going to use that to help us when it comes around to this situation. So 13 days, and there is what we call the red phone that is connected between Kennedy and Khrushchev. And so for 13 days, it's kind of a back and forth situation. And inside of your packet, that is one of your reading activities, is to actually read the conversation that's going down between Kennedy and Khrushchev during this 13-day time span, and the different points of view and perspective on it, to where Khrushchev, depending on whether he's addressing the public or whether he's addressing Kennedy himself, kind of changes his perspective on it. To the rest of the world, he wants to sound like the Soviet Union is the victim in this, the United States is being the bully. But when he talks to Kennedy about it, he said, we're just defending ourselves. We're just making sure that we're ready in case you do something. So anyway, in the end, like I said, this is kind of like a big game of chicken to see who's going to back down first. It ends up being Khrushchev and the Soviet Union. They agree to withdraw their missiles from Cuba. We in turn agree to withdraw our missiles from Turkey. and we end the blockade because we did have Cuba completely surrounded in case something happened. So we did literally go to the brink of war. But thank goodness everything was solved in a peaceful manner, and the Soviet Union backs down. Okay, so I'm going to officially get into our new slides for today, which is talking about the new frontier. So there's a lot of exciting things about Kennedy and the early 1960s. There's also a lot of bad things that happened during the early 1960s. Let's try not to focus on the bad stuff right this minute. But anyway, so New Frontier is what Kennedy has come up with. He, very similar to FDR, to Roosevelt, in that he doesn't really take a lot of time to push for civil rights quite yet. In his head, he imagined that he was going to push more during his, I guess, already setting himself up that there would be a second term for him, even though we know that is not the case because unfortunately in 1963 Kennedy will be assassinated. So I think a lot of his thinking was long term. He was thinking that during his second term in office he would use that time to come in and really push for civil rights, even though that's not really how it works out. But on a side note, LBJ, his vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, comes in and pushes civil rights laws in his memory, in JFK's memory. And a lot of people really appreciate that he did that. Even though Johnson will actually lose a lot of supporters, Johnson, who is a senator from Texas, the great state of Texas, which has always been a hardcore southern state, will actually not be happy. He'll lose some constituents, some supporters, because of those Southern Dixiecrats will not be happy with the pushes for civil rights. So anyway, a lot of those individuals will actually leave and join the Republican Party later on. Some of them will remain Democrats. But anyway, we still, throughout the 20th century, see a lot of changes in political party and followers of those political parties. Okay. All right, so a little bit more into the frontier and what all his frontier program includes. Not so much civil rights stuff. But you can't forget one of Kennedy's famous quotes. And I said it yesterday a little bit, but ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. So Kennedy was calling on citizens to step up. You know, he's pretty much saying, don't be lazy, don't ask for a handout. Why don't you do your part, and then the country can step in and help you along the way, but you help yourself first. Okay, so Kennedy is a very popular president, so is his family. Again, we kind of hit on this yesterday. They are a very young family. He is the youngest elected president. His wife is Jackie. Jackie Kennedy is known as being a very fashionable lady. And if you pay attention in some of the slides, one of the big ones was her dress that she wore to the inaugural ball, and it is a strapless dress, which was a really big deal because she was the first lady to ever expose her shoulders and expose her bare shoulders and arms, and that was a really big deal. The whole beehive tall hairdo, and if you don't know what that is, Google it. But she was a trendsetter. She did a lot of remodeling. Every first lady has certain rooms of the house that they can remodel, the private living quarters for the president and his family. They can remodel those rooms how they want to. Now, there are some rooms they can't touch, like Washington's room and Lincoln's room and a few others they can't touch, can't mess with. But there are some rooms they can remodel, and so everybody really raves about her remodeling of the White House. They say that JFK has the best and the brightest of the new up-and-comers. They're bringing all these great ideas, and it's going to be a fantastic time. A lot of it continuing the good feelings of the 1950s. Okay, Last thing I'm going to say before I get further into his New Frontier program is that there's another picture on the PowerPoint slide that you should note. It has the Kennedy brothers. So you've got, and you'll have to forgive me, I think it's Ted Kennedy, then John, and then Robert. I think that is their order as far as who's oldest to youngest. I know Robbie or Robert, the one that's kind of more in the background, he's the youngest, and he will actually run for president later on in 1968. Unfortunately, the Kennedy family is plagued with tragedy. JFK is assassinated in 68. His brother is assassinated while running for office in JFK is assassinated in 63. His brother running for office is going to be assassinated in 68. And then John Jr., JFK's little boy, will die in his early 20s in a helicopter accident. I mean, just plagued with tragedy. It's terrible. It's awful. So, very similar to what Truman faced with trying to push through a lot of civil rights laws. Those Southern Dixiecrats are going to try and stop anything that they see as far as working towards integration and civil rights movements. You do have the creation of the Peace Corps that happens in 1961, volunteer program where young college students and professionals, doctors, nurses, etc., go to underdeveloped countries. Now, I will throw this at you, all right? On the surface, it looks like we're just trying to do a lot of good, which we are, all right? We are. We are trying to bring in medicine and much needed hygiene and food and things to help these underdeveloped countries, but also below the surface, we're doing this to help fight communism. Again, trying to convince countries that, we'll give you aid and supplies, whatever you need. Just don't fall to communism. Don't fall to the dark side, right? So anyway, Peace Corps is established, the Alliance for Progress, to give aid to Latin American countries, our southern neighbors in this hemisphere, right? Let's see, what else? We do have to continue deficit spending. I looked at that a little bit in your packet yesterday. And we do obviously increase military spending during this very uncertain time in the Cold War. So that's another big one. All right, the other big note, and this starts to lead us into our conspiracy theories, and I think I'm going to leave conspiracy theory talk for tomorrow because I have some videos. I'm going to post the videos today, and then we'll probably talk about it in depth tomorrow. But the first one that is up is Race to the Moon. A lot of people don't think that it actually happened. That is one of many conspiracy theories. So the video that I'm going to post for you to check out is the Mythbusters guys that do I guess it is called Mythbusters, but they do a great job of debunking all these ideas as to how it was faked and put in a Hollywood studio and televised for everybody. So anyway, I think it's Discovery Channel that does all that. So anyway, I'm going to put the link on it for you to go watch it. Okay. So we know already that Sputnik, the first satellite that was built by the Soviet Union, Sputnik has been launched. It happens in 1957. We're trying to hurry to catch up. We launched our first satellite in 1961. My bad. Oh, no, it is 59. All right, so in 1959, and then we hear the Soviet Union, 1961, has put their first man in space, and we're like, tack on it, So Kennedy issues the challenge. He says, I want to have a man on the moon by the end of the decade. That's what he says. Man on the moon by the end of the decade. And we just barely do it. It happens July of 1969, but we make it happen. So, of course, all this is with the help and assistance of the newly created NASA. And here's another thing to make yourself a note of, that NASA is not just all about space and space race. It actually is missile research. I think I said that on another video as well. Alan Shepard, first astronaut. John Glenn, the first astronaut to go up and actually orbit the Earth and come back down safely. So again, it's taking baby steps. We're doing one thing at a time. First up, come back, orbit the Earth, come back. make it out to the moon, come back. You know, the first one to land on the moon and come back. So that's why there's so many Apollo missions, right? Because of all these different attempts. Not all of them go well. Apollo 13 was almost a huge tragedy. So anyway, we try and try again. Finally, it happens. July of 1969. The 3 famous astronauts on that mission, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and you'll have to forgive me, I always forget the third one. It'll come to me in a second. Anyway, there was 3, okay? So Neil Armstrong's the one that actually walks out of the spaceship first, touches ground, and makes the famous statement, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." And, you know, the United States is just in awe that we have made this progress, and of course we're showing it off to the rest of the world. You were talking about the conspiracy theories, the picture of the flag flying, and everybody's like, obviously that's a fake because there's no wind on the moon. So anyway, these pictures are actually what are going to be talked about in the Mythbusters show. The different shadows, the lighting, how all this obviously was a setup. Okay. Now, last but not least is the assassination of JFK. I'm going to save that for tomorrow, but I am going to link a video for you to check out, and then we'll wrap up Conspiracy Theory Talk tomorrow, part 2.